G'day legends, I hope that you're well. Now, I landed yesterday morning back in Australia, but then had to go from the airport directly into the hospital to get an MRI on my brain tumour. So, that took bloody forever, and then I went to sleep and basically woke up. So I'm sorry that I missed yesterday completely. It was a write-off due to jet lag. Now, the results from that MRI, I will have to you guys in just under a week. It takes about a week for them to get the results, read the results, and then an appointment with a neurosurgeon to get those results. So I know it's been a couple of days, but let's not stuff around and let's have a look at the map. So let's jump in and have a look at the maps straight away. So of course, we've got Ukraine center, the capital of Kyiv, the red area that Russia has occupied since 22, and the purple since 14. The green area is liberated by Ukraine since the start of the invasion in 22. We've got Romania, Poland, Belarus, and Russia around here, this being Crimea and Donetsk. So let's go into Bakhmut and have a look. This is where we're seeing the most amount of movement and the most amount of fighting over the last few weeks. And it has been moving a lot slower than we would have thought, well over a month ago. We were saying that this could collapse any day. And it is definitely, moving in favour of the Russians, but it is definitely not completely collapsed. Whether that was on purpose or not, that's where you can start speculating about this. But today is the 12th of April, and let's step back over the last couple of days and have a look at what has changed. I believe the last time I got on was maybe the 9th in the US, maybe the 10th here. So roll back to the 11th, and then the 10th, and then the 9th. So we did see a major jump there. So I believe this is about where I spoke to you last time, and then we see on the 11th, just in this southeastern block, that Russia has stepped up, closing some of this gap. But then the major jump we see is till today, which has seen Russia push up almost all the way until this train line. And we know the train line is one of them, or at least was one of the main fortifications of the Ukrainian forces. We see a step a little bit of everywhere, especially in the north as well, closing up both the north, south, and on the east. And one of the things we talk about where, this has been such a difficult war territorial-wise is the front line is so long. Now look how long the front line is across all these areas. And it's even longer than it looks because it dips in and out in different areas. So if you're able to close up the front line, you're able to consolidate more troops and move further. But of course that happens in both offensive and defensive. Now, the leader of Wagner Group, Prigozhin, has claimed already more than 80% of the city is under control of the musicians, referring to Wagner Group, including all the administrative buildings and industrial facilities. Although Ukraine's Eastern Military Command spokesman has denied Prigozhin's claim, and he said, "I can confidently state that Ukrainian defense sources control a much larger percent of the territory of Bakhmut." Now, I'm not really sure what he's meaning there, because this is the small bit of Bakhmut that the Ukrainians are holding. This is grey zone, so this is not held. This is active fighting within the zone. So it's this part that is held. The rest is under Russian control, or at least Wagner Group control. Now, something else I wanted to have a look at was this footage right here from Wagner Group, and this is inside Bakhmut. Now, we'll come forward and we can see that they're at a stadium, in the gym, and around a lot of areas. So where exactly actually is this? And this has been geolocated onto the ISW map here. I've put in the coordinates to right in the center at this stadium here. So this is the stadium, and you can see the photographs, and it's moved across onto here. So this has definitely at least confirmed that this region is now under control. And what we'll do is have a look at how Bakhmut is looking on the ISW compared to the deep state. So this is where the train line is running through here, and this is the Bakhmutka River. So showing definitely deep state, a big difference in this region, as they're saying Russia is climbing all the way up till the train line, except for this little bit in the south, which is at least very similar on what Russia is claiming on the ISW, but not assessed on the ISW. So this is claimed in the yellow and assessed in the red. So it is slightly different. But let's have a look at War Mapper as well and have a look what they're saying. So the purple is claimed, and the red is where Russia is holding. This is the stadium we just spoke of. And this is showing, again, a fairly similar picture. This is the train line heading through here. So this one's showing more similar to the ISW map, maybe in the south and the southwest, but more similar to the deep state in the northeast as well. So as always with this stuff, take it with a little bit of a grain of salt and look over some other stuff. But one of the other things is there's been a lot of people speculating about Russian paratroopers, the VDV, having been seen and being used in Bakhmut. And what they're saying is these are on the north and south flanks, handed over from Wagner forces now to the traditional Russian Federation forces, being like the VDV or other infantry type units. The VDV are paratroopers. Prigozhin has said, as far as I know, they have everything they need to organise their defence and counter-attacks if necessary. Now, I can't confirm this, but it would make sense, as we haven't seen any significant pushes on the flanks, and we've seen more of the fighting right in the centre. We can assume that the Wagner forces, many of whom are better trained than the regular Russian forces, have been replaced in holding positions to move to areas of assault. So I should say that the VDV aren't just a regular force, they are still paratroopers, but there are Wagner forces guys who are better trained. We've seen Wagner actually be able to create a breakthrough. So I think if this is true, we'll start seeing more photographs come out. But what we'll see is in positions where it's just being held, like on the flanks, them being replaced by more traditional army roles, and Wagner forces moved onto areas on their assault groups and pushing through and fighting in centres like this. We know Wagner has a scale of 0 to 100 of their troops. They've got really good troops and really poor conscripted guys that they're just throwing into the fight. But it has been shown they have been able to make ground in areas like this, and this is why there has been speculation of them wanting to be held in Bakhmut by the Ukrainian forces so they don't go to areas like Avdiivka and try and attempt more of a breakthrough there. So that's what we're going to go to next on the map, and let's have a look at what we've seen in Avdiivka. Today is the 12th, yesterday the 11th, no significant change, and to the 10th, and then to the 9th. So just to the north of Krasnohorivka, we did see a major westerly push from the Russians up to this road, and then over the last few days, no dramatic changes. And let's go down to Mariinka, which is where we've seen a lot of fighting, no dramatic changes. Now, we haven't seen anything in Ugledar either. So if we come to the Kremenar front line here, this is Kremenar. If we just look in here, we have seen Russia make a little bit of ground on this area, this heavily wooded area here. But this is somewhere we've seen the front line very fluid, both east and west, north and south in areas. Something I wanted to have a look at as well, which have been coming out, and I can't say the authenticity of any of this, but these are some maps of Russian field fortifications have come out. Now, something I wanted to say was interesting in this is you see the amount of fortifications inside Russian territory, and this is the Ukrainian border here, and this border sits around here. This is the 14 border, and a lot of these fortifications sit inside Russian territory. As we've spoken before, the Russia have speculated that Ukraine may have a go on somewhere like Belgorod and then try and do a territory exchange back. They take some territory and we'll give you this for that. But what we do see is this Crimea down here is where a lot of people are saying is from Zaporizhzhia here. This is where the red zone would be across here, that Ukraine are going to try and push a wedge down here and basically cut off the Russians in this side and this side to the west and east, and basically cut off this side, being unable to supply the troops on this side down into Crimea. But as you can see, there's almost an inverse wedge here of these field fortifications. So if we go to the next one, I think this shows it as well. Of course, these are just dots on a map, but this is being shared around a little bit, so take it with a grain of salt, but it makes sense that this is where the majority of these field fortifications would be, and along the beach in Crimea that could be landed on as well in the north of Crimea. And we know that there are two areas where Ukraine could come down in there, but as well, take everything with absolutely a grain of salt. So we're going to read as well and then look at some footage of the British MOD. So their intelligence update from the 11th of April. As of the 03rd of April 23, Russian media reported the transfer of TOS-1 Alpha thermobaric multiple launch rocket systems to Russian airborne forces, the VDV. The VDV is who we're talking about that could be in Bakhmut. The highly destructive TOS-1 Alpha, which Russia designates as a heavy flamethrower, is typically operated by Russian specialist chemical, biological, radiological protection troops in Ukraine, or CBRN, and has not previously been formally associated with the VDV. The transfer likely indicates a future role for the VDV in offensive operations in Ukraine. It is likely part of efforts to reconstitute the VDV after it suffered heavy casualties in the first 9 months of the war. Now, the VDV is really the first guys we saw in the war. They're the ones that landed on the Hostomel airfield in Kyiv, and we saw them take, the airfield fairly quickly, although it turned bad pretty quickly, with their operations seeming to go to shit as they came out of the helicopters and were hitching lifts on armour to get out. out, the guys that got out, and so many were there. And we know that the VDV was hollowed out dramatically as there was a lot of guys die. So let's have a look at TOS-1. And these are a thermobaric weapon, also known as a vacuum bomb, so people will sometimes call them. So this is just some footage of them being used. And you can see the shockwave coming off these weapons, that they are a very scary weapon. This is like a multi-launch system, similar-ish to HIMARS, but nowhere near as technologically advanced. This is also footage of the TOS-1 Alpha, the flamethrower, being used in the center of Bakhmut as well. So I guess I'm drawing this conclusion. I don't have any evidence of this, but if these weapons are being transferred for the VDV, and we're hearing that the VDV are more coming into Bakhmut, maybe this lines up. We're seeing these weapons there, potentially the troops there. I'm not too sure. Now, going around a bit of everywhere is a horrific war crime that shows the of a Ukrainian prisoner of war from Russian troops. And this is just absolutely horrific. You know, this is one of the worst videos I've seen come out of this war and should be absolutely just condemned by every side. I don't care how pro-Russian you are. This should be condemned. This is disgusting. And the perpetrators of that deserve what is coming from them. It is disgusting. We have seen war crimes littered throughout this war. Absolutely, we have from both sides. I'll never downplay that. But this just is a whole new thing again of like how horrific this war is. And Russia painting themselves as a professional army, this just draws them back 100 years looking like barbarians. And I've seen people laughing to this and sharing this and look how good this is. No, I don't give a shit who's on the ground. It could be my worst enemy. No one deserves that. That is just horrible, and it is just something that I think shows the true nature of how horrific this is, and people should not get away with these things, no matter who they are. There's been so much talk recently about leaked documents, these top secret documents. Now, none of these can actually really be verified, but along with a lot of the claims, one of their main claims was that Tier 1 Special Forces units are working in Ukraine. Now, I wouldn't doubt this. These kind of ops are literally what Tier 1 SF units are for. That's why they were invented. But there is not yet any official evidence. Although we know Western forces were in Ukraine to train, advise and assist in roles well before the start of the invasion, and was reported they pulled out after that. Now, people think that these guys, these SF guys, if they're there or not, but people think that they're on the front line shooting at Russians. But their role is far greater than that. And there was a lot of rumors I heard early on about, special forces guys working in jobs of counter-espionage in the cities, basically springing Russian spies there. But again, at this point, this is just all unconfirmed rumors. But these reports also cast a lot of doubt over Ukraine's ability in upcoming offensives, potentially only making small territorial gains. Now, this is something that we will have to see, and we will see it very quickly. But we do know that Ukraine has made large gains against Russia about 6 months ago, Kherson, Kharkiv, but these were against positions held for a lot less time than positions such as Crimea and Donetsk. And these positions have been, dug in and reinforced now for years. And the time that it has taken Ukraine now to go into the West, be refitted, retrained, re-equipped, has also given Russian-occupied areas a chance to dig in. And these outcomes we will see in time. Now, Sergei Aksyonov, who's the leader, the Moscow-appointed leader in Crimea, has told reporters that Russian forces in Crimea had built modern, in-depth defences and had more than enough troops and equipment to repel a possible Ukrainian assault. And if that assault does happen, they will know for a long time, because it is still going to take a long time to push all the way down to Crimea. He said, we cannot underestimate the enemy, but we can definitely say that we are ready and that there will be no catastrophe. But legends, that's it for me today. So I hope you're having a great week. And if you want to support me, there's links below, but never feel obliged to do that at all. So look after yourselves, and I'll speak to you tomorrow. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.